Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Today we will going to present a risk assessment of cadmium in fish. So before we proceed, I would like to introduce my partner and I. So my name is Anisha Finas binti Syafur Bahrain. My metric number is 198652. My partner's name is Afifah binti Awaluddin. Her metric number is 198170. So today we will going to discuss about the news article, then our field table, hazard identification, hazard characterization, exposure assessment, risk characterization, method of reduction, as well as the advices to the public. So first is the news article. Researchers have found that the water in Krishna River in Vijayawada, which is in India, as well as the fish caught from the Prakasam Barrage Reservoir, are contaminated by heavy metals. Cadmium is one of the heavy metal has been found present in higher concentration in fish. So we proceed with our filler table. The first fact is the cadmium level was found to be 1.03 milligram per kilogram as against the maximum level by WHO. So the ideas are, by exceeding the ADI level may cause adverse effects. This is due to the bioaccumulation and magnification that can contaminate the food chain. The leading issues are, what is the ADI level of the cadmium in fish, and what are the adverse effects of cadmium, and how to reduce the amount of cadmium level. So we have to look up to the ADI, PTWI, and PTMI values of cadmium on the WHO website. Further research on method of reducing cadmium content in fish should be determined. Second fact is highest cadmium levels were detected in the kidneys and the liver of fish. As we all know, the kidney is the prime target organ for cadmium in high concentration, as well as liver, to store a considerable part of accumulated cadmium. But how does cadmium accumulate in those organs, and how does cadmium affect human health, specifically in kidney and liver? So the action plans are by doing a literature review on how cadmium affects fish and human, and how the kidneys get affected by cadmium. The third fact is the river is polluted due to unchecked discharge of effluents in the river. This is due to the negligence of the authorities and loose law enforcement. The learning issues is, what is the penalty that can be issued by Environmental Quality Act 1974 if this is happened in Malaysia? The action plan is to refer into the enforcement based on Environmental Quality Act 1974. Next is hazard identification. As we all know, cadmium is a heavy metal, so the type of hazard is contaminant and chemical hazard. Cadmium considered as toxic and able to disrupt most of the organ system, because cadmium has been widely used for industrial materials such as food packaging, stabilizers for polyvinyl chloride, pigments in plastic and glasses. Aquatic environment can absorb cadmium through the discharge of industrial waste into the river. What are the adverse effects of cadmium? First, stomach irritation, abdominal cramp, nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea. This is because a study found that an acute cadmium poisoning in humans can cause skin irritation, vomiting, and respiratory disorder. And according to Bennett and Loris, in human, prolonged exposure to cadmium has been associated with the incidence of pulmonary insufficiency, renal abnormalities, and osteomalacia. Cadmium has also been involved in the development of hypertension. And the worst case is to lead to liver and kidney cancer, which cadmium is human and animal carcinogen. Hazard characterization. Cadmium, it is a quantitative risk assessment as we can measure the ADI. The value for cadmium is 0.36 microgram per kilogram body weight per day. For PTWI, which is provisional tolerable weekly intake, is 2.5 microgram per kilogram body weight per week. Provisional tolerable monthly intake, PTMI, is 25 microgram per kilogram body weight per month. I will pass to Afifah for.
My name is Afifah binti Awaluddin. I'll be presenting about exposure assessment. So based on the exposure assessments of cadmium in fish product, it is found that the exposure of cadmium is 0.0059 milligram per kilogram body weight per week. So for the average body weight used in this calculation is 60 kilogram, and the PTWI for cadmium is 0.0025 milligram per kilogram body weight. Therefore, the exposure assessment shows that the exposure of cadmium exceeds the PTWI by 212%. The assumptions from this assessment is that 100% of population consume the food. It's a conservative assumption which is overestimate. And then the total mean exposure, which is mean consumption times mean concentration, is an overestimate exposure. Mean concentration of cadmium in fish product were found in studies from various places. Thus, there might be underestimate or overestimate of exposure. Data gaps for this assessment is that since the news is from India, we should use the estimation Indian food intake. However, the estimation Indian food intake were not found. Therefore, we use estimation Malaysian food intake. And then the data is not representative of the type of fish. We do not know what type of fish is used in the fish product. And not all fish products were included in risk exposure calculation, such as surimi and specific type of fish. And no consumption data for specific group, such as children, pregnant women, and older people. For the uncertainty and variability of this assessment, that estimated Malaysian food intake, the age range is 18 to 59 years old. And fishbowl sample, which cadmium contamination cannot be detected, were taken from one place only. Other places might have contamination of cadmium in their fishbowl sample. Next is the fish cake composition was mixed with seaweed. The cadmium can be found in seaweed. Therefore, we do not know whether the fish cake cadmium contamination in fish cake is based on the fish only or together with the seaweed. And lastly is that contamination of cadmium in fish crackers were not found. This is similar to fishbowl sample, which the fish crackers in other places can be contaminated by cadmium. Next is the risk characterization, which for cadmium is divided into two, general population and vulnerable population. The exposure assessment indicates that the risk is higher than PTWI value in consuming fish and fish product for general population. For vulnerable population, studies found that highest risk among the age groups are the elderly age, which higher than 60, while research from FSA found that children and adults are among the group that have the possibility in exceeding the health-based guidance value. It is also found in a study that pregnant women is a vulnerable population for this heavy metal contamination.
So I will proceed with the method of reduction. First is by removing organs, as cadmium is primarily stored in the kidney and liver. Second is by limiting our fish consumption. So by limiting fish and shellfish intake, we reduce the possibilities of cadmium poisoning. But can cadmium be reduced by heat treatment? The answer is no, because cadmium will not get affected by any cooking method.
So the advice to the public for this contamination is that since the exposure assessment shows high contamination in fish product, the health advice to the public are to eat fish and fish product moderately, to avoid catching, selling or eating fish found in contaminated area. And lastly is to remove organs of fish completely because the contamination of cadmium is concentrated in their organs. So the conclusion is that this assessment was conducted to observe the level of heavy metals, which is cadmium, in the fish product and the risk associated with cadmium exposure from the food types. Cadmium can invade the fish by the environment, feed and water. Cadmium is primarily toxic to the kidney and cause bone demineralization. However, it has been statistically associated with increased risk of cancer in the lung, endometrium, bladder, and breast. Jivanaraj et al. Writes that toxic element may accumulate in the body and cause adverse health effects. Thus, joints such as FAO or WHO Expert Committee on Food Additive, JECFA, has developed provisional tolerable weekly intake (PTWI) to monitor the daily variation in intake amounts of chemical. So that's all. That's all from us. Thank you.